Are you or someone you know looking to buy or sell a home? When you use a HomeGain Realtor to buy or sell a home, you can get $150. Visit HomeGain.com and click on the Promo 150 banner at the top of the page to get started. Compare HomeGain Realtors and choose your favorite. Complete your home purchase or sale transaction with a HomeGain Realtor, and HomeGain will pay you $150. Get started today by going to HomeGain.com.
Welcome back, Washington, D.C. Metro to Real Estate 360 Live. I'm your host, Ryan Soper, joined today by my guest, Louis Cammarosano, the general manager of HomeGain. Quick reminder, the show is dedicated to building the Washington, D.C. Metro's housing and credit markets. If you guys ever have any questions, concerns, or real estate needs, the best number to reach us is the off-air phone number, which is 877-245-2030. That's 877-245-2030. Or via the web at realestate360live.com. That's realestate360live.com. We've been discussing QE3 for the last half hour. I know many of you have questions out there. So QE3, does this mean that gas prices is going to start shooting up a little bit more? Does our food prices going to start to rise more? And what can you do to protect yourself? I mean, Louis, I would venture to say that we're going to probably continue to see commodity prices rise, especially oil and agricultural products. Would you agree with that?
Well, we did see that in the days following QE3. So gold spiked sharply, silver sharply, platinum, nickel, copper, crude oil, all went up. We should be in a deflationary environment after that massive credit expansion that we had and the bust, but the Fed has refused to allow that to happen. So I think because they continue to encourage credit and they continue to pile debt upon debt, we will get into an inflationary environment. We're already there. I mean, if you take the prices of food and energy, they've gone up tremendous amounts. The fixed goods, if you bring in the entire CPI, is up modestly, but still up when we should be down. So I think it's just going to accelerate from here.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. And
that's price inflation. I mean, we've had already inflation, the increase of the money supply and credit, which has massively been inflated by the Fed, and we're seeing it coming through in prices of fixed goods, services, gold, silver, commodities, real estate eventually.
One of the questions that I had from a listener, I want to say it was a week or two ago, Brian had actually asked, he's like, well, wouldn't you think that by the Fed, continuing to pump money into the system and basically lending money to banks at next to nothing, that they would want to start lending money out there to businesses? And, my immediate response is no, because they don't want to have to make these low spreads of where interest rates are right now and take on the risk of lending consumers when they could, actually take and it's actually park it with the Fed. Because
also, Ryan, they want to continue their lucrative trading operations, and they need reserves to cover those trades.
Correct. And one of the biggest problems with this whole thing is that the Federal Reserve is still paying banks not to lend money. I mean, they're basically saying that, instead of risking their money by lending it out, they can just park it at the Fed and make risk-free profits there. They're just going to pay them points on that money that's sitting there. If the Federal Reserve really wanted banks to start lending, then all they have to do is stop paying the banks money there. And
it's funny, the Federal Reserve wants one thing. They want what their member banks want.
Absolutely.
They're not really, it's a farce to say that they're there to help the economy, and somehow they're in charge of employment. Is ludicrous.
Well, there's been some estimates that there's $1.5 trillion in excess reserves on these balance sheets right now. But then I was listening to an interview with Steve Wynn last night, and he said it's probably closer to $3 trillion in monies that are just floating around there. Now, if that money was flushed out into the system, it could be, they're saying, devastating to the economy because it would be hyperinflation right off the bat if that started happening. So to keep this money basically parked, they can try to just slowly release it out there.
Right, and the people who get the money first in a pre-inflationary and then inflationary environment, they get the full benefit of the money. The people who don't get it are the ones when it finally trickles down to them when the inflation hits, their dollars are worthless. If they really were concerned about the average person, the amount of money they printed up, they could have given each family probably $100,000. That would have been inflationary, but at least people would have received the money. I'm not advocating that. But the way they do it is by printing it up, giving it to the banks and to their buddies. They ensure that they get the benefit of it, and then they hope that somehow, or I don't think they even care, but they say that somehow it's going to impact the economy in a positive way. And so far it hasn't, other than they can say it would have been worse.
Right. And I mean, this $40 billion that they're just throwing out there right now to buy up mortgage-backed securities, not a single dollar of this will go into anybody's hands. Okay.
They're cleaning up someone's balance sheet.
Right. I mean,
they're buying something that no one else wants.
And the theory is that it will eventually filter down. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I mean,
what filters down is when the private sector has money that it made through the creation of a product or service, and then because they make money from that, they hire people.
Yeah. It was interesting in a CNBC article, they had discussed a report from the Bank of England about the effects of quantitative easing, and it said that the Bank of England's policies of quantitative easing, similar to the Fed's, had benefited mainly the wealthy. Specifically, that the QE program had boosted the value of stocks and bonds by about 26%, or about $970 billion, and about 40% of those gains went to the richest 5% of the British households.
And the danger in that, Ryan, is when people say, oh, capitalism doesn't work. This isn't capitalism. This is controlling the banks who can tell the Fed to print money up for them and give it to them.
Yeah, and I mean, and let them make risky bets knowing that they're always going to be there to bail them out. I mean,
and those risky bets are not helping the economy. They're maybe creating a few jobs, but they're not creating productive jobs. And trading and making bets, that's not an economy.
No, and it's really...
That's not building up, creating new services. That's not creating new products. That's not enhancing the man in the street or the person who creates those. It is enhancing. The banks are making a fortune, and you can see they take these risky bets with the London Whale, J.P. Morgan, so what, it's only $16 billion loss, whatever it is. That's money created out of thin air just because they made a bet and someone on the other side took it.
Yeah, many are actually at this point calling for Bernanke's job, and I believe it was economist, was it Marc Faber, I believe, that had said that he should resign?
Well, he said it. He's also that he's going to destroy the world with his fiscal policy.
Yeah, one of his quotes I have in front of me is, if I had messed up as badly as Bernanke, I would for sure resign. The mandate of the Fed to boost asset prices and thereby create wealth is ludicrous. It doesn't work that way. It's a temporary boost followed by a crash. And, this is exactly what's taking place. And my hope is that, somebody, I think it's going to take the majority of the general public and the people in the United States that they need to start understanding how the Fed is in control of our economic structure at this point. I mean,
you've given it over to one person and said, you know what you're doing, so we don't know anything about this, so go ahead and have at it. But, the two presidential candidates, they've kind of stayed out of Fed politics, so to speak. I think Obama never says anything about the Federal Reserve. He jumps in about complaining about with the Occupy Wall Street against the banks, but he doesn't draw the connection between the Fed and the bank. And then Romney, I think, sometimes says he's for Bernanke, sometimes says he's against him. I think you really only had Ron Paul was the one who was saying that the Fed is an evil institution and at some point, not immediately, should be eliminated. And I think he was arguing not to eliminate the Fed right away, but to kind of phase it out by allowing competing currencies. Because if you allowed competing currencies to the dollar probably wouldn't win if its main reason to prop up its own existence is to print more of it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I feel like, obviously the point of our show, we want to try to educate people on what's going on out there, let people know that what the Fed's doing right now is not good long term for everybody. However, if you like we said before, if you are able to take advantage of the low interest rate environment to protect yourself from the future inflation and lock in yourself to a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, then you should probably consider doing so. I mean, I don't know that it's out of this realm for us to have a collapse in the next 6 months to a year. Obviously, they can tend to run these type of Ponzi schemes for an extended period of time, or a so-called Ponzi scheme. I wouldn't put it past them that this could go on for a couple more years, but you just don't know. At some point in time, obviously, China and a lot of the other countries that are buying up a lot of our debt are going to say, you know what, we have to pull the plug. And it's going to probably be, wouldn't you say, Lewis, once one of them does it, they're all going to do it. And then who's going to be stuck holding the bag? The Fed. They're going to continue to print up money to continue buying the new debt that the Congress is pumping out there. And that's disastrous.
That's what people don't realize is that Congress, keeps blowing through the debt ceiling. They keep blaming the president. They blame the Congress for spending all this money. It wouldn't be possible if someone wasn't buying the debt. Now, for a while, it was the Chinese and the Japanese, but recently, the Fed is the one who actually purchases the debt. So it's kind of ironic that Bernanke is telling Congress they've got to get their fiscal house in order when his monetary policy allows them not to keep their fiscal policy in order.
Yeah, it's almost like it's just a way that one can push it off on the other, and neither side is doing anything to help this economy, get better. They're not.
No, it's the easiest type of, gamblers would tell you the easiest type of thing to fix, a type of contest to fix, is one where there's two participants. You only have to get to one of them. If you get to both of them, you easily win.
Yeah, and I think you brought up an interesting point. Neither one of the political, our presidential candidates have mentioned anything about this. It's more or less they're concentrating on the jobs, and what's interesting is, do they really think that anything's going to get cured with the job situation if they don't take care of the
or the real estate? I mean, the NAR, they kind of make noises or in the publications that neither party or neither presidential candidate is talking about real estate, and they just assume, I guess the Fed policies are going to help the real estate market.
And
no one's debating what damage the Fed actually does.
No, it's long term. Obviously, we have some prices that are rising in certain real estate markets, and others they're stagnant or declining. And like most of it has to do with what are the jobs like in that area? Is it a metropolitan area? Is it transit areas or military there? But overall, I mean, sure, we're starting to see rental prices that are starting to skyrocket all over the place. I really think that in the next year we're really going to see rental prices jump even more. And one of the things that you can do to protect yourself from those rising rental prices is to buy a home, is to secure a 30-year fixed mortgage.
And the way you can buy a home, the better way to buy a home is not that the economy should be driven by policies that allow people to buy homes, but by a sound economy whereby people have jobs and they can buy homes. They've got it backwards. They're trying to drive the economy through the housing market rather than driving the overall economy, which would in turn drive people's ability to buy houses.
Yeah, that makes complete sense, and it's just that where it doesn't seem like they're consistently wanting to meddle in the markets instead of just letting the free market do its job. We're up on a break. When we come back, question is the real estate market better off now than 4 years ago? Stay right there when we come back.